one very crucial part of the story, the detail, is that throughout the story and throughout this time, it turns out my sister Candace Beckwith Zirkle started telling everybody everywhere that she was worried about my mental health. I don't know at what time that started, but she kept saying she was worried about my mental health and that she kept telling multiple other people, and not me, that her and everybody else in my family had been offering and begging to help me financially if I'd only just take care of my mental health for my undiagnosed mental illness. Now, Candace hasn't seen me for 5 years. She had not been to Escalante to see my house. She hadn't met any of the people in my social circle. So, but most of my other family members had not been there for 10 years. And at a different part, I'm going to show you that all my phone bills, nobody was calling. Nobody was trying to reach out. And I can also show you my email accounts, both from Candace and from anybody at Zirkle, that for years, nobody sent an email saying, you know what, we'd love to financially help you since you were sexually assaulted at your work and we called you a liar. And we told everybody in the family about it. So, so take all of this with a grain of salt because she is not reaching out to me. Nobody has reached out to me. But she keeps telling this story to everybody else. And it's the same framing. Like, we're so concerned. Oh my gosh, we are so worried. And all we want to do is help. Remember, I had actually been diagnosed with PTSD from the sexual assault. And I'm doing weekly EMDR sessions, an hour each one. And diagnosed with PTSD. And getting help and care for that. So even just the claim like that she was telling outsiders that I was that I wouldn't accept help from them, that is true crazy. Okay, this is Gaslighting 101. And sorry, I didn't know a better way to do this, but my family was reaching out and contacting my kids, contravening me. And this is Candace Zirkle Beckwith. And this is how she said, my son set up the GoFundMe. And this is where she messages my son. Hey, I saw your GoFundMe account. Is your mom okay with family donating? Which is really weird because I've never had a problem. Nobody's ever asked if they could donate. I never turned anything down. But this is where gaslighting and alienation is going on. Is there anything else I could do to help? This is a lot for you to take on. You were so young, a very responsible young person, but still so young. You were such a loving, wonderful son. But is there a way Lex would be okay with any other family? Please let me know. You don't have to do this alone. You were very loved. It was fantastic seeing you in July. I'm just going to take a second here really quickly and say, my sister would ship bricks if I was going around to her kids in their colleges and universities and meeting them behind the scenes and suggesting that Candace was mentally ill. And here's the response. I talked with my mom, and absolutely she knows about the GoFundMe. And she has said absolutely no problem with family donations. She also reminded me last October, after she was sexually assaulted at work, that she did reach out to certain members of the family asking for help. And and they didn't. It's true. They didn't help at that time. They started calling me a liar. And then they started cutting off all my ties with anyone in my community, but that's on a different part of this story. But you were right that there is a lot our family has to get through ahead, and you can donate all you want. Thanks for reaching out. This is a very hard situation, and encourage others to donate too. And you mentioned I don't have to do this alone. And I can include you and your family on the team on this fundraiser if you'd like. There's a feature for that. We had a lot on our shoulders Thanks for always offering to help. Now, just briefly, let's just say the family did not do, they did donate. Candace donated $500, and then, which I was very grateful for, but they refused to help. Leave comments here. Leave comments on, does this seem manipulative, gaslighting, alienating? When she's like, oh, this is too much for you. No, what was a lot was actually the stress my son had about having these heart problems. Sorry about the quality of this. I'm running out of ink on the printer, but the reply is, thank you for reaching out. I'll let you know if I can think of anything. But remember, she's like, this is too much for your shoulders. Like, this is just too much for you to take on by yourself. I don't know if any other 25-year-old on here has ever thought that that was too much. Okay, so I'm picking up my story and doing a side note on a little bit more about my family. Here's some receipts, but remember, in 2023, the house I was living in burned down in the middle of the night, and I had been having multiple issues with racing heart. I'd had at least 5 instances, and 4 of which I had to go to an ER or call paramedics. And I remember I had moved from Hawaii straight to this small town, Escalante, in Escalante in Utah. But when I started having these heart palpitations, they'd go over 220 beats per minute, and it would last for hours. Luckily, I was in fairly good shape, but I ended up being in the ER a couple times because I could not bring it down. I tried all of the things like holding my breath and bearing down. Anyway, it's called SVT. I mean, that's what the hospital called it. I'd gone to almost nearly 10,000 feet over by Duck Village, or Cedar Breaks, which is where one of the episodes happened, or Bryce Canyon, which is more about 7,000 feet above sea level, in a short time where I was living at sea level. So they said that happened. But the first time I went to the ER, the doctor told me that they were going to give me a shot of something. I really expected those paddles that we go like on all of the movie things, but they said they're not safe and they don't use them anymore. And so they administered something called, this is how the ER doctor explained it to me. He said, we have to stop your heart briefly and reset it. It resets and you'll be fine. And he was kind of going, you're just going to feel something funny in a minute. But the truth is, like, I thought it'd be funny as in, like, you know, when anesthesia before an operation, a procedure, and you just kind of feel loopy. And it wasn't funny like that. It was like being deep underwater with your eyes open, and you're trying to get so far to the surface to take a breath because there's, I guess, no oxygen. And as I had a few of these episodes, one time it was in I had to call an ambulance because I was driving and it suddenly came on and I was like suddenly going lightheaded. So I immediately pulled over to the side of the road, and this group of firemen in an ambulance came by, and they gave me like the printout where it shows your heartbeat, and then you flatline for a little bit, and then your heartbeat starts back up, and it just kept happening. And so at one point the doctor said, you know, I don't want to see you in here anymore. You need to go down to the hospital, which was 3 hours away in St. George. And he said, you need to schedule to have an ablation. So that was, I went to St. George. I scheduled the procedure that would be in the hospital for the ablation. Both my father and my father-in-law both had ablations before at the same time. My father-in-law's turned out to be really serious. He almost died from his, somehow they nicked a corner of his lung. And weirdly, it was the same doctor that worked on Fred and my father-in-law. So, but that wasn't the one who I was seeing. And I was scheduled, and they said, you know, are you having somebody pick you up? And I did have somebody picking me up. My son, who is was 25 at the time, and he has he was 24 at the time, and he had a car, and he was going to pick me up because the doctor said, otherwise, we're going to keep you in the hospital overnight for observation. And so I said, okay, we've got it. At the time, my son and I, for a brief time, had been living in the house in Escalante, and then my son got a job in a town a little ways away, and it was just me still in Escalante, and I was still planning on moving out. I was working on getting the house packed up and moved out when it was on fire, and that's all part of the story. There's pictures. This is part of a multi-part series, but the thing here is, my son was renting a place. I ended up getting a job at the same place he was working. There's not a lot of employers in Escalante that give you that where you get a full-time working wage. You can work as a checkout person, you can work as a bunch of things, but they're part-time. They don't have benefits. I had been working at the post office before the sexual assault, and I had a great wage. I loved it. So my son and I were going to move in together. His lease was coming due, and due to the fire, I didn't actually have, I didn't have the money to put down a first and last month's rent and deposit. I lost everything in the fire. I lost everything, including, even my vehicle. So my son had this great idea. Why not do this GoFundMe? One of the things you have to know about me is, I don't know if I'm ADHD, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I'm the oldest daughter, if that has anything to do with it. I was parentified at a young age, but my family was very much a narcissistic abuse structure, and I lived a completely different life than my kids did, and I became very hyper independent. I was shamed if I ever asked for help from anybody. So it was really hard for me to turn to anyone for help. My family, worst of all, my parents or my sister, they would shame me and make it a huge deal if I asked for help. So when my son volunteered to do a GoFundMe, I had it was really difficult. I had hard feeling. I thought he's a wonderful kid, obviously, but I just was nervous because it feels like you're begging, and so that was incredibly hard for me. That was hard, but he is a brilliant kid, and so he did a GoFundMe so that we could put together, we could collect some money to do the first and last month's rent and get a place together, and I could start work. I started work the week after the heart procedure, after the ablation. So that was a big help. I've always meant to write a whole bunch of handwritten thank yous to everybody, and I still have the list. I wrote everybody's name down who donated, and I plan to. It's been over a year, and it's actually longer, but I've been hoping and waiting for life to slow down to thank everybody who donated. I think my son thanked people on the app, but it wasn't, we didn't need a massive sum. But basically, the GoFundMe, my son said, my mom needs, the doctor is saying they won't release her unless she has a place to go to after the procedure. And so I'm doing a fundraiser to afford the fees for both of us to go into a bigger place than the place he needed. And it was, security deposit, first and last month's rent. And so that's what the fundraiser was for. But this is more about, the story's about what it looks like when your family's trying to gaslight you.